So like I said, when I was in Boston, I got priced out. Like, people are like, oh, Keith, you can do it. I say, if I work a job. So here's the thing. The average income for a person with a disability who does not have a job, if it's living on SSI, let's just take SSI. The average income on SSI per month is roughly $780, which means that you're making roughly $96,000 to $10,000 a year, which is 2.5 times below the poverty level. So you ain't poor, you extra poor, like extra, extra. And so the gift and the curse of that is that you are able to find affordable housing that's income-based. If you get a job, you cannot work more than 20 hours a week. Because anything over 20 hours a week, for every dollar you make, they take 2. And then you now are become income ineligible for your house, so then you can stay in your house, but then you now have to pay market rate. So my quote subsidized condo in the box, right, was $800 when I was not working. The moment I had a job, jumped up to $1,700. So if you can imagine, so we work. So if you get a bill one month and you budget out your bill's $150 a month, and the next month you get that same bill and it's now $1,000, and it's going to be $1,000 going forward. Now you have to make decisions. So people are making decisions on, do I have enough, as opposed to buying hamburger, we'll go get tuna fish. As opposed to having, Christmas, we'll get trinkets. As opposed to going to a family vacation, we'll just kind of sit here and do Netflix. Like, you start making adjustments, but you're making adjustments not because you want to, but because you have to. And the beauty of what you all have is that you're a small enough community, and you know enough that you can sit down and say, okay, if we're going to have people drop in and be vacation home renters, but yes, it's nice that they own the home, but we who live here year-round, on and off season, then y'all going to have to pay some. So working in Cape Cod, so everybody know the Kennedys, and they go off and they do all that stuff. I did work with the people who live there year-round. They can't afford to work at the coffee shop and have a house. So one person I know, they were sharing a house with 10 other people, and each one of them was paying $800. And so they were sleeping. So they would sleep in their sleeping bag to pay $800 in order to work at the coffee shop for the tourists. And and me, I'm sitting there going, what the hell wrong with y'all? But they had been on the island. That's their home. They want to be there. Just like Tillamook County is your home, you want to be here. But you should not have to be making a decision between, do I eat or do I move? Because literally there's no guarantee if you move. Housing crisis has swept this country. So I live down in California, and my friends live over in the Bay, San Francisco, Oakland. And so they do a project called Homefulness, where they build affordable housing, but they can't meet the demand. So people are sleeping on tents on street corners. And so as opposed to communities saying, hey, we have the crisis, we need to figure out how to help our community not be homeless, they now passed the ordinance to make it illegal to be homeless. So they are putting up spikes on benches so people can't sleep overnight. They put boulders on streets so people can't pitch tents. There was actually a story of a Catholic church that, like, oh, they believe in Jesus, hallelujah. They stopped letting people come into the sanctuary. They would lock the door, and then they started putting spikes on their steps at night so people wouldn't sleep in front of the church. I'm pretty sure that's not what the Bible said about, love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor and put them in a sleeping bag. That's not in the Bible. But what do we do to move it forward? Because we know what the problems are. Now we have to find a solution. So if it's building housing stock, that's just a matter of building. Now the beauty of building housing stock is for the kids in the economy and every other school. It's also a chance for them to learn hands-on trade, right? So so not only are you teaching them how to build, you're teaching them about architectural design, you're teaching them about accessibility, you're teaching them about aesthetics and how to lay it out. So there's potential to be not just an immediate but a long-term solution to the problems facing the community. But the question then lies, who has the power to make those decisions? Who wants that power to make those decisions? And does it boil down to, well, because in the South End they were like, no, Keith, we don't want to have affordable housing because it will drive down the value of our property. Okay, so where my mother lives and where I was trying to live, how many of you heard of the Boston Marathon? Right? Mm-hmm. So the finish line literally is 2 blocks behind my mom's house. And everybody's like, oh, that's so nice. And you know what it's like when tourists show up, right? Mm-hmm. How nice is that? Especially when they get drunk and go, woo-hoo, when they start like, oh, Lord. But the solution that we had, they called Tent City. But even then, since then, they have built roughly 20,000 new units of housing in Boston. Less than 1% have been affordable. Mm-hmm. Everything is market rate. You cannot get into my neighborhood. If you're fortunate to get into an apartment in the building that my mother and I moved in 36 years ago, I was giggling. I said, let me check it. Because when they built it, the regulations were, if you want this building, you got to have people of color in the building. So you got to get your Negroes, your sticks, and all this stuff just to make it look like you tried. And so we've been there for 30 years. But if my mother wanted to move inside the building and buy an apartment, 1 bedroom, 1 bath unit selling in my building now was listed on Redfin for $1.75 million. Oh, and if you want to buy the parking space, that's another $150,000. That's in a quote progressive liberal city, right? So the crisis is not about can it be solved. The crisis is in the will of the people to solve it. And if you're raising kids, kids look at parents and, we try to hide our stuff. And, they know when we're stressed. They know when we're at the edge of our rope and we're trying to do this. But when you add a disability to it, it makes it that much harder. So one of the stories that I don't tell a lot is that we were the family who were living in a hotel. So my wife had got, we was like, she was like, I don't feel well. We went to the doctor. She had cancer. And so I'm sitting there dealing with that. And I got a text message from the landlord saying, you're late with your rent. I was late by 3 days, right? Because in California, if you're late 1 day, they can send you a 15-day notice. Mm-hmm. So if you're late 2 days, they literally can start the eviction process. So I'm sitting there using very inappropriate language that I will not use in the house of the Lord, looking at the text message, and I'm just sitting there going, now how do we do this? Because now I have a medical crisis and a housing crisis, and I got kids, and we broke, and if you get evicted, you cannot get to another house. Because once you have an eviction on your record, they'd go, oh, well, you don't pay your rent. Now, never mind what the landlord being a complete bag of being, right? But those are real challenges. So, like, when I talk to people, I know what it's like to have to get up. We stayed at a value place for, maybe like 4.5 months. So it was a week-to-week thing where you had to pay $300 and some. So it was 6 of us in a 2-bedroom studio, making maybe a third of this size. 6 of us. And we could not get out because every time we applied, bad credit eviction. And it also didn't help that every time we show up, and I get out, they'd see the wife, they'd get out the car. Oh, this nice young lady, I get out the car. Oh my God, what happened to him? Damn, I'm sexy. That is. But implicit bias plays a huge part in whether or not people will be able to get in the house. And if the landlord doesn't want you on their property, they'll just say, we found another tenant that had better credit. And if you, the last house we rented, they literally told us, we're not going to take it. He deleted his account. So in order to pay the rent, we just transfer the money and be done with it, get the receipt. I went to go pay the rent. He removed his entire account. Took us to court and said we hadn't paid rent. The judge then said, and prior to the case started, he said, why didn't you just pay him his money? How do you give people their money if they say they don't want their money? So how do you pay rent to somebody who doesn't take your check? You know, and then the guy gets in the court, he said, well, I didn't want to kick him out. I even offered him a ride to the bank because I'm a man of God.
Oh,
You a man of God? Are you lying? Hold on, let me slide over before you get hit with a lightning bolt, because I'm not trying to, right? But that's me, right? That's me being, quote, active in the community, knowing the laws and being proactive. So if you can imagine somebody who's working at a Safeway, who's working at a local restaurant, who don't have time to do all the nuance and the minutia of, you know, figuring out, you know, is this an illegal eviction? Is there housing discrimination? Is it based on my ethnicity? Is it based on my gender? My sexual orientation? Is it, excuse me, all of these things going on, so you have to pull back and say, what do I do? And so, what you know, I designed housing programs, we did all this stuff, but then you run into people who go, that's nice, y'all can do it, just don't move behind me. I would love to give you my house, but yeah, the neighbors probably won't. And it's subtle. Like at least in the 60s, they would tell you, Negro, don't come. Now they'll just say, yeah, we'd love to try application. We'll consider it. And then they'll say, well, do you have first, last, and security? Here you go. Well, do you have the first 3 months of rent? And can I get a proof of your bank statement? What is your work history? Have you ever been convicted? We did a Corey check. All of these things. And if you know anything about society, depending on where you fall on the cultural spectrum, that's a kiss of death. And so living with as a person with a disability, trying to get just into the community, I can't be in the community if I can't have a place to live. Like, so if I don't have a place to lay my head, how can I volunteer? Right? How can I open a business? How can I help, you know, be a youth minister or, you know, organize a local charity? How can I do all of that if I literally cannot find a place to lay my head? So people take it and they go, oh, Keith, you're being dramatic. I mean, I am dramatic, but that's a whole nother story. But the reality is, it's like the crisis is a crisis made by man, not made by nature. So if people are buying up the rental stock, the reason I can't afford anything in Boston, and my mother has not moved out of that apartment, because if she was to move out of that apartment, her rent would go up. So right now, the reason she can afford it is because we've been there forever. But every year, they hit her with a $100 rent increase. So when we moved in, let's say the rent was like $900 a month. Her rent now is probably about $2,800 a month. And she's retired. So your Social Security and your retirement, half of your money just goes to shelter. That's the national average. People are spending anywhere from 40 to 60% of their income just on shelter. And oh yeah, you want to eat? Yeah, that's right.